Welcome to New Thinking for a New World, a Tallberg Foundation podcast. I am Alan Stoga, your host. Each week, I bring you conversations with people who think differently about the great issues that are shaping our world. Geopolitics, disruptive tech, mass migration, the changing climate, culture wars, all of it is grist for our mill. I hope you enjoy listening. I also hope you will let me know what you think and that you join the conversation at tallbergfoundation.org. And now for today's episode of New Thinking for a New World. What happens in the Amazon is of planetary consequence. Its rainforests influence weather and rainfall around the world. Its rivers account for 1/4 of the available freshwater on Earth. Its drainage basin is more than twice as large as that of the Congo River in Africa, which is the world's second biggest. The Amazon harbors an estimated 10% of the planet's known life forms. Fernando Trujillo, a Colombian marine biologist, leads a team that is exploring what keeps the Amazon's freshwater basin alive. That is particularly important at a time when the region is suffering from record drought. River levels are low, in some cases historically so, and water temperatures are at intolerably high levels, especially if you're a fish. Continuing deforestation makes everything worse, of course, and experts are debating how close the Amazon might be to an irreversible tipping point. Obviously, none of the consequences of that would be good for any of us. Welcome, Fernando, to New Thinking for a New World.
Thank you, Alan. I'm so glad to be here with you today and share a little bit all this information about the Amazon.
Indeed, if any issue needs new thinking, it's the Amazon. Despite endless hand-wringing and global exhortations about the urgency to save the so-called lungs of the planet, it seems that things are just getting worse, and maybe at an accelerating pace. What I find intriguing about your work, Fernando, is that you have focused on a single species, river dolphins, as a way to understand this incredibly important ecosystem, and then to develop new approaches to governance and hopefully to solutions. So let's start at the beginning. Why river dolphins?
Well, the river dolphins are very charismatic species, and people care a lot about the dolphins. They feel empathy with the dolphins, and the dolphins are like the jaguars of the water in the Amazon. They are everywhere, in the rivers, in the floodplain, in the small tributaries, and they are powerful figures for the indigenous knowledge. They are living in underwater cities, and they connect everything in the water. So I have seen a lot of degradation on the land of the Amazon. But for me, the most important thing in the Amazon is water. Water is the special issue here. We are talking about the river itself, the Amazon River, but also we are talking about the flying rivers. Every single tree can pump about 1,000 liters per day of water in the atmosphere. So we need to look and approach to understand what is happening to the water. And I think river dolphins can help to connect people with that. We have done several expeditions along the rivers for so many years. And we have done a kind of diagnosis about what is happening in Brazil, in Peru, in Colombia, in Ecuador, in Bolivia, in the rivers. And the degradation is dramatic. So river dolphins can help to understand what is happening.
Somewhere I saw that you used the metaphor that river dolphins are ecological canaries. They're the canaries in the mine. In this case, doesn't quite work. Canaries in the river. Is that a fair way to think about them? If the river dolphin is healthy, the river's healthy, and vice versa.
Absolutely. We are looking at these large predators in the rivers, like dolphins, that they migrate a lot. They don't know about frontiers. They move free from one country to another. So yes, dolphins are kind of sentinels of what is happening in the water. If you have healthy rivers, you have dolphins populations, you have fisheries, you have people living there. During the expeditions, I am quite shocked in some areas when you are just sailing and you cannot see anything in the water. No fish, not aquatic birds, not dolphins, not fisheries. And I'm starting to call these the deserts of water in the Amazon. Uh, I don't know if pollution and human intervention, but this ecosystem look like empty. So the dolphins, in some way, are showing that there are still some hot spots of biodiversity in the rivers. We are now,
Excuse me, let me just interrupt. Hotspots in a positive sense.
yes, hotspots in the sense that they have a lot of aquatic biodiversity. Areas with manatees, areas with otters, areas with fish, dolphins, aquatic birds. So this is a hot spot in aquatic biodiversity.
Last year, there was a mass kill of river dolphins in Lake Tefe in Brazil. What happened?
Well, that was a very incredible situation. We were not prepared for that. The water just reached a very high temperatures, more than 100 degrees Fahrenheit degrees in the water. So the dolphins were not able to escape to deep waters or to the main rivers because the drought was so severe and so quickly. So the animals died for a thermic shock. In one single day in September, 13th of September, 78 dolphins died in one single day. We were not prepared for that. We still are trying to understand really what happened, why dolphins don't escape to deep waters. And also, at first, we were thinking about a kind of toxin from algae that is quite common with this stress, physiological stress in the water happen. But after all the necropsies of all dolphins, the vets didn't find a strong evidence of toxins. So far we know that is the temperature of the water. And we were not expecting this. The story for us changed last year with this. And all the governments are very concerned because it wasn't only the dolphins, was millions of fish that died. And the human populations were isolated in small tributaries and they were not able to move from these areas. They don't have rain for water to drink. And the situation is the same this year. We are not losing dolphins because we are implementing some protocols trying to push dolphins to deep areas in different ecosystems. But still, we have the problem with the isolation of the village of people and also the massive death of fish. So this climate crisis is coming to stay, and we need to adapt and we need to look for solutions for that.
Let's talk for a second about the drought. I've seen various numbers for various parts of the Amazon. Of course, the Amazon basin is huge, so you get different circumstances in different parts of it. But I have the overall impression that the drought, as we measure things, is historic in the sense that we've seen less rainfall for a longer period of time than, at least in some places, has ever been recorded before.
I think it's a combination of factors, Alan. You have you have a lot of deforestation, so you are losing all these trees that are pumping water into the atmosphere. The temperature of the land is just going up, and if you don't have trees, you start kind of desertification in so many areas. And also, you have a lot of fires. We have a record this year of fires in South America, not only in the Amazon but also in Pantanal. You can see all the forests in fires, and it's very difficult to understand why, for example, the upper part of the Amazon, that is the more wet part of the Amazon, still is in fire. So it's a combination of factors there. And also, 2 weeks ago, I was in Peru and I was looking at a lot of fires. So when I asked the people why you are burning things, and they say, well, this is a very severe drought and we want to do a lot of fires because it's the way to cool the rain. So they are exacerbating the problem. We need to do a lot of education and a lot of implementation of law to prevent the fires. because every year is worse and worse. So all this combination of factors are putting the Amazon in a real danger with the droughts.
And what is your expectation? Is this a trend line, or does it will it start raining suddenly?
I'm very worried because we're supposed to have La Nina this year. So we're supposed to have a lot of rain and very strong flood pools in the Amazon, and we didn't have. So during the last 4 years, we didn't have in the Amazon a real flood pools, a real flood in the Amazon, and we need it because this is the dynamic in the Amazon. The flood pools is like the breathing of the forest. When all the forest is flooded, all these remote lakes, isolated lakes with a lot of fish are connected with the main system. So you are rebuilding all this system, and the system will be very healthy when they are connected with all these ponds and lakes that are isolated, and the people are going to have a lot of fish. But during the last 4 years, we didn't have that. So people now are doing agriculture in the margin of the Amazon River, and they used to do that in a seasonal way, like a crop for 3 months or 4 months. But now they are doing in a permanent way. So the river is changing a lot. So I'm very very worried, and I think we need to ask the governments to come with implementations of protocols to know what we need to do. For example, this year we lost several dolphins, not because the temperatures of the water, but the people are putting a lot of nets in the rivers, crossing side by side. So they are capturing all the fish, and then they are going to be starved, and also they are killing a lot of dolphins because the dolphins are entangled. So we need to change the cultural patterns in the Amazon. We need that local people understand the severity of the problem.
Fernando, you're one of these scientists that both does hard science, but also then tries to work, as you've just said, focus on both advocacy and education on the one hand, but also governance on the other hand. You are one of the drivers, I understand, behind the Global Declaration for River Dolphins. What is it, and where does it go?
Well, I'm so worried because if you think about the number of people living in the rivers where there are river dolphins, it's huge. It's 1.6 billions of people living in those rivers. So
around the world.
Yes, in Asia and in South America where there are river dolphins. So the 20% of the whole human population are living in that rivers. So the impact is huge. So we need the governments to be committed with the conservation of the rivers, and we need to act now. So the Global Declaration for River Dolphins invited 14 countries where river dolphins inhabit. And so far we have 11 countries that signed it. And probably at the COP16, we are going to have another one signing the agreement, the Global Declaration. And what is this about? All the governments have different policies and laws about deforestation, about mining, gold mining, about restrictions of fisheries, but sometimes they don't know how to put in place. And with the river dolphins, we are creating this opportunity for the governments to look in a small scale, for example, in Ramsar sites that are in wetlands of international importance. They have a management plan. So we are helping the governments to put in place all the laws and resolutions they already have, and policies for deforestation, for fisheries, for pollution. And the governments are understanding that this is a real possibility to look for positive changes. Because now, with all this narrative around the Amazon, where everything is going bad, we need positive news. We need to scale these positive solutions that there are in some areas of the Amazon. It's the only way we can find an agenda to build something strong to protect the Amazon.
What do War Lessons from Gaza, Rethinking Education, Peace in Ukraine, and Visionary Leadership have in common? They are all themes from recent episodes of this podcast. Check out more episodes on tallbergfoundation.org or on a platform of your choice.
Let me be a cynic for a moment, which is to say that there are no shortage of global declarations on this or that. We've had a whole series of COP meetings over the last decades, yet everything gets worse. So this is a very targeted initiative that you and others were part of, focused on river dolphins, as you've explained, because they really are the canaries in the mine in some sense for a significant number of people in the world. Why? I don't want to say are you optimistic. I don't like optimism or pessimism. Why do you think this declaration will actually move these governments not just to codify what they've already agreed to do, but actually to do what they've already agreed to do?
I think because we are including in that equation also the big companies and big organizations, and we are finding money to invest in solutions. With the Global Declaration, we invited the World Bank to be part of this panel. And the World Bank is putting money for developing infrastructure, for example, in Asia, in India, in Nepal, in Bangladesh. And they have a huge projects. And after the Global Declaration, they invite us to try to know how they can implement protocols to create a red light in their projects and say, okay, here, I cannot invest money or to build infrastructure if we don't have some mitigation measures for river dolphins and for rivers. So now they are developing protocols in Asia for river dolphins and to monitor the rivers. So things are changing a little bit. And also, for example, we are looking for economic solutions for the local people. So we put the dolphins as an example of good tourist sustainable practices. The fishermen now are in trouble because they are not having access to a lot of fish. There are some fish population that are overfishing. So now these fishermen are taking tourists to the areas, and they are earning more money with dolphins than with the fisheries. So we are starting to connect all these things. We are looking, for example, the illegal gold mining that are just putting a lot of mercury in the water. And we are looking with a lot of experts in different parts of the world how to change the technology, how to avoid the use of mercury and use other technologies to extract the gold. So this is the kind of solutions we are building around the dolphins. But at the end, we are not talking here about dolphins. We are talking about the health of the rivers and the people.
Mercury has special significance for you. I read somewhere that your mercury content in your body is not only off the charts, it's way too high. What's the story?
It's very true. I am monitoring mercury in fish that people are eating, and I'm monitoring mercury on dolphins. And 2 years ago, I was with the Washington Post doing a kind of a note about the mercury, and they asked me about my levels. And I say, I don't know. I always wanted to do, but I never did. So they pushed me, and I did the test, and the maximum amount of mercury you can have in your body is 1 milligram per kilogram. And I had 36.4 milligram per kilogram. So almost 1 milligram per year I have been in the Amazon. I have been 37 years already.
So it turns out you're the canary in the mine, actually.
Probably yes, Alan. So for me, it was scary. Not for me, for the local communities. So the people that all the time are living in the Amazon. So Colombia, for example, has the record of mercury per capita in the planet. And I will ask the people, everybody, just try to do the test for mercury, because we have mercury everywhere, in the tuna, in different kind of fish, in the shrimps. And we don't know. The mercury is an invisible enemy that destroys your central nervous systems. So we need to stop that. It is crazy. The other day I was talking with a scientist, and he said to me, well, for thousands of years, we have been used mercury to try to isolate the gold. And I say, yes, but we didn't have the technology we have now thousands of years ago. So I think we need to stop these things and look in a different way. I'm not going to be naive and say stop the exploitation of gold, because the gold is so central for the economy of the countries. But we can find a different way to extract the gold without damage the health of the people. Not only in the areas where they are extracting the gold, but far, far away, because all these fish don't remain in the Amazon. They go to the main cities in different countries in South America. And even some of the fish are exported to the United States. So the mercury is not staying in a single place. It's a global problem.
I think we need to reassure our listeners, your mercury levels are now coming down, you told me.
Yes. I reduced from 36 to 16 because I'm taking some selenium pills and changing my consumption habits, and is going better. And this is as well a good news. So we can implement solutions, but the starting point is we need governments to start to monitor human populations in the Amazon, and we need to create pilot programs to try to solve the problem of the mercury, stopping the deforestation, changing the technology to extract the gold, but also monitoring the people, and probably doing some aquaculture with native species from the Amazon, and to try to reduce the consumption of fish from the rivers. So there are solutions, but we need political willing here, and also economic investment to start to put solutions in place.
Let's go back to the declaration for a moment. I know there was hope that the Chinese would sign the agreement. Where does that stand? What is the Chinese attitude towards this?
Well, we are not very sure with that, because this is a kind of voluntary agreement. And the Chinese are doing quite well with river dolphins in the Yangtze River. In 2005, there was the extinction of one of the species living in the Yangtze, the beige. But now they have the finless porpoise, the Yangtze finless porpoise, and they are doing breeding, ex situ conservation management, and they are recovering some of the populations. So we really don't know why the Chinese don't want to be part of this. Eventually, I hope they are going to be. And during the COP16, we are going to have the Peruvian government signing. So that will be the country number 12. So the only two that remain without signing will be China and Myanmar. But Myanmar is in a political crisis just now. But we will still trying to convince China to be part of this initiative. And I think it's very important. We need to secure the rivers. You, for example, in the United States, you are now very clever. You are destroying your dams and your hydroelectrics. You understood the value of the rivers, the ecological value of the rivers. And we need to think in that way. We need free-flowing rivers in the Amazon, because now we have a lot of dams along the Amazon. And if we just go with this pattern, maybe in 10 years, we are only going to have 3 rivers without damming. And that is crazy, because the fish need the rivers free for reproduction. There are some fish like the catfish that they can travel 12,000 kilometers, 6,000 in one way and 6,000 in another way, just to reproduce. So we are stopping and we are collapsing all the system in the Amazon.
Let me take this in a different direction partially. Years ago, I had an investor in a company I ran who, whenever we got into a tough negotiation that was looking like we were butting heads, he would say, okay, time out. Let's suspend disbelief for a moment and tell me what you really want to accomplish what you're trying to do. So let me ask you, if I ask you to suspend disbelief, that governments are too focused on short term, that companies want to spend in one direction and not another direction, that people just want to get on with life. Tell me what the river dolphins have taught you that could save the Amazon from the potential disaster we're looking at.
Basically, with river dolphins, we are showing the people the importance of keep the connectivity of the rivers and the health of the rivers. And we are connecting to the dolphins all these problems about human health, loss of habitat, loss of biodiversity. But Alan, the main problem for the Amazon now is not deforestation, is not pollution, is the organized crime in the Amazon. We have a very low governance in the Amazon, or in some cases, they are not governance at all. So the organized crime has almost 500,000 people working very organized to do the extraction of cocaine, illegal gold, trafficking animal species, and also timber. So the only solution for the Amazon is to try to recover the governance in the Amazon with the schools, with hospitals, with productive projects for people. But if we don't understand that, we are competing with illegal economies that are very profitable. For example, 1 kilogram of cocaine is about $20,000 per kilogram. But 1 kilogram of gold is $65,000 per kilogram. So all these illegal economies are moving a lot of money, and they are not interested just to stop. So the only way is working with the organizations, companies, in the case of the gold, looking for different solutions, technological solutions to get the goal. And we need to enforce the presence of the governments. And this is a very long discussions in the planet. Sometimes the United States or the European Union said to Brazil, okay, what about to create a body of countries to protect the Amazon? And we say from South America, no, the Amazon is ours. We are going to protect, but we are not doing. We are not doing in a right way. So we need to look for figures to really protect the Amazon.
That is the conundrum. It is a series of global problems with global consequence, but governance is national. And you have that juxtaposition between where the problem is and where the power is, perhaps, which could be insoluble unless we can come up with different governance structures, different governance forms. Because I'm sure the Brazilians, I've had Brazilians say to me, it's our Amazon. We'll solve it or not solve it. So don't offer me money, don't offer me troops, don't say you're going to come in here because you're not. What makes you optimistic that Gordian knot can be cut?
Well,
or maybe optimistic may be the wrong word. Maybe hopeful is a better word.
Yes, well, I think the governments now are understanding that we are in a crisis in the Amazon. And we have the Berlin summit last year with all the presidents around the Amazon. And we have the vice president of the United States and the president of France in Belém de Pará with all the presidents talking about what we need to be done in the Amazon to protect. And they came up with 113 different actions. And by the way, one of the actions, the number 57, was the conservation management plan for river dolphins, because it was an example. It is an example of transboundary cooperation. So this is a very positive thing. But the problem with these 113 actions, they are very good, but we need to look the way to implementation, and it's not so easy. But at least now the governments are identifying that we are on the clock, and we need to act now. You're starting this conversation talking about the tipping point for the Amazon. And I am part of the science panel of the Amazon, and we say that it's 23 to 25% of deforestation for the Amazon. But there are some parts in the south of the Amazon that they already have 48% of deforestation. So we are talking here about the average. And also, we need to change a little bit the focus of our solutions. We are working a lot with international cooperation to solve the problems in the deforestation areas. And that is fine. But don't forget the areas that are still are in good conditions. Because if not, we are only being reactive to the problems. And we need to be proactive and to plan in advance what we need to conserve in the Amazon, what is the connectivity that are most important for us to avoid the loss of biodiversity and the loss of water and the climate crisis. So now we are talking about that. And I think it gave me a little bit of optimism. There's already a path that we need to follow. As I say before, we need to scale the solution. We need to create the cities of the future in the Amazon with sustainable energies. So we need to come up with solutions in a small scale that we can demonstrate that are working and then replicate in different areas, make viral in different parts of the Amazon and start to change everything. Don't forget, we are now 48 millions of people living in the Amazon, 48 millions of people.
Fernando Trujillo, thank you very much for this conversation. I have only one closing caution. You've got to take better care of yourself. That mercury is still 16 times too much.
It's true. I will take care of mine, and also I will try to do all in my possible ways to protect the Amazon and to avoid this problem for so many people. Thanks for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of New Thinking for a New World. I'm Alan Stoga, podcast host, and I look forward to your joining our next conversation. Remember, tell us what you think at tallbergfoundation.org.